My name is Will Fountain with Lenders Cooperative, and this is
David Tinsley,
also with Lenders Cooperative. This is a series of the novice and the pro, where one of us gets to act like the novice, which for me is not a big leap, and David gets to act as our residential pro, especially around SBA. And today what we're going to do is just kind of back it up just a little bit. For those of you that are relatively new in the banking industry, it's a ton of acronyms that are associated with banking. And one of those acronyms, which we're going to explore today, again, might be a little elementary for some of our seasoned folks watching this, but is called an SBA LSP.
That's right.
If you wouldn't mind, just entertain me and explain that in simple forms.
Yeah,
please.
okay. Yeah, we can do that. So LSP just stands for a lender service provider, which is really nothing more than an agent that's working on a loan on behalf of the bank, all right, or the lender. SBA is lending in general is common that you would have agents involved, because when you think about it, if you're working with an attorney, if you're working with an appraiser, in a sense, all of those are acting as agents on a loan. And granted, this is not a legal opinion. I'm just saying in general the concept of an agent. So any party involved in either like the packaging or the application process, any kind of financial preparation, any one of those could be considered an agent.
Okay. They could all be different people?
Yes, they can all, and throughout the lending process, that can all be different. The unique status of a lender service provider is that SBA allows for a relationship. There is an agreement between the lender and the LSP, simply called an LSP agreement, that SBA sets some rules up that it has to meet certain requirements. SBA actually, you're required to send that agreement that's executed between the lender and the LSP, and then it's officially on file with the SBA. And what that means is that there's disclosures that have to happen on every loan where money is paid. For different fees that are paid out is called the 159. The unique relationship of the LSP to the bank is that doesn't have to be disclosed. And the reason for that is because the LSP can't be paid out of the loan.
All right, hold on. You're going real fast. So let's slow it down a little bit. This is the novice.
You got it.
And the pro. All right, so just to make sure we're all clear, a third-party agent, meaning somebody that helps you process a loan, whether it's deal grooming.
Yeah, anything in the loan process.
Anytime you touch that loan package.
Yeah, and traditionally you're talking about they're assisting the lender in underwriting. They're assisting in closing a loan, servicing a loan.
Okay.
Any of those kind of traditional back office operational type steps.
And so on the conventional side, it would just be like you mentioned, lawyers or appraisers, kind of reviewing the various elements of the underwriting process. But in this case, you can house all of that inside one team called an LSP.
So the LSP, it's sort of unique to the SBA world. The concept, well, not the concept of an agent, but a lender service provider is specific to organizations in the 7A world that are assisting lenders in making SBA loans. Like that is unique to the SBA world. Just that terminology specifically. Okay. Agents are the thing that I was meaning are everywhere. You know, that's just a legal concept.
Yeah, those are agents, but when we're in the SBA world,
specifically that is a recognized organizational and relationship within the SBA world.
Which is approved, as you mentioned.
That's right. There's an agreement that governs it. The SOP kind of has some basic rules laid out. But in general, it's not that different than if you contracted some people to work for you as an underwriter, as a closer. That's all that's happening here.
Yes.
It's just housed under a specific type of agreement. At the end of the day, the SBA wants the lender to have oversight of their loan portfolio, how it's underwritten, how it's closed. And SBA is looking at the lender for each of the 7A loans that get booked. Like, they are responsible for this. So you can have a staff on board, which can be costly depending on the amount of volume you're doing. And in some cases, it's sort of like being able to have the benefit of a fractional position.
That you're working with an LSP.
That's right. That way you're not carrying the full overhead.
Right.
And so if I've only got 5 loans I'm doing over the next 6 months, do I need a team of underwriters and closers and servicers? Probably not. And and so in some ways, when you're either starting up a department, when you're growing a department, or if it's just a matter of a simple
influx of volume.
Right. I got overflow. I need some help. Yeah. Those are traditionally where you see LSPs involved.
Okay. And then you quickly got into 159.
That's right. Yeah. So every loan, everything's about fees in banking, right? Yeah. So
unfortunately for the consumer, but also good for the bank. I mean,
right.
There are risk involved, which is why we charge fees.
So what it comes down to is that the way fees are reported on a loan, SBA keeps an eye on, and there are on every transaction, there are certain fees that have to be itemized, and they have to be reported separately on this form, which is a Form 159, because SBA loves their forms.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that the relationship, in the same way that you don't have to report how much you paid your internal underwriter, this relationship is similar to that. SBA allows you to treat this agent as essentially an extension of your own team.
You manage those.
Yeah, you're responsible for the work they do.
Not all LSPs are created equal. Some charge.
That's right.
A level here, some here, and it's dependent upon the service. And
that's right. But the key is that they're not paid out of the loan proceeds. They're paid almost in that sense.
Like a closing fee or something, like a packaging fee.
Well, the bank can collect a packaging fee. I think we've talked on that before. That's revenue to the bank. But the point is, the way that the lender operates is if you would pay your own staff, but you're not. It's not like there's a line item on a loan that says here's the cost to the underwriter. Here's the you're not doing that in the same way the LSP is treated like that. You are not paying them directly out of the loan. Like you might pay an appraisal fee through the loan.
Yeah,
you might pay a referral fee. Right.
Total.
But that's not how the LSP works. The advantage to having that is that you are treating them as if they're your own staff, in a sense.
Okay. All right. So we do know that the government loves forms.
Yes, they do.
You've talked about Form 159, which means there's at least 158 other ones, probably.
Probably more than that, but yeah.
So what else if a bank... All right, so we kind of established either the bank can, if they're interested in doing SBA lending, they can staff up internally.
That's right.
Or they can work with an LSP. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of LSPs out there in the market. We have one included.
Yeah. Well, and you have so we're talking about kind of what it is, why have one in the first place. Is really kind of what you're getting into. The reality is that when you're doing an SBA loan, there's a lot of steps on each one. So a person can come in and have some pretty good expertise on it, but there's literally a limit one person can accomplish without having other resources devoted to them. So some departments don't get far off the ground because they don't really they have one person trying to carry the load
inside the silo.
Right, but they're carrying the load by themselves, which means that you're having to. There's only so much attention you can devote at any time on something, and so what that means is that they may only be able to get a handful of loans finished in a year.
Okay.
If you want to do more loans, you're tasked. You're stuck with either I need to hire additional people, and again, which you're carrying the burden of that cost, or you might outsource, that piece and work with like a lender service provider. And what that allows you to do is most of those compensation models are set up in such a way that you're only paying for the LSP when there's work to be done. Because it might be a month or two between each loan.
Right. So you don't have them on retainer. It's just pay as it comes.
That's right.
So you mentioned, how are you set up? Because I'm, full disclosure, I'm pretty familiar with the team.
Right.
And we work on this, and I work with community banks and lenders of all types to figure out the proper strategy. But it's kind of like an assembly line, right? I mean, you've got specialized, as you mentioned, like people inside your team. Walk me through the kind of the over framework of what an LSP kind of in general looks like. Yeah,
well, so there's always sort of the front end work. The main kind of components, I guess you will, to the loan, or I guess the rules behind the way SBA does it, is that you can't charge a fee that's contingent on an outcome. Okay, so if you're working with like an LSP, the cost for the underwriting, it can't be like I'll pay you this much for an approval, but if it's a denial, I'm only going to pay this month. Like,
right.
It's got to be the same regardless of the outcome. Now the the humor in saying it can't be a contingent fee is that in reality, most fees don't get paid on a loan unless the loan closes. Well, that's not entirely true, but I won't go into tremendous detail there. But it's funny that you say no contingent fees, but some fees by their nature are contingent, and SBA understands that. So, yeah. But really, we're trying to follow the spirit of the program there. So we're careful with that. At the same time, the principle I said earlier is that SBA is looking for the lender to have that oversight. And so that means that the lender still is the one responsible for whether a loan gets approved. So we've broken it up into steps that where the application gets put together. Usually we offer that just as an accommodation to the lender. There's no real fee for talking through a deal structure or deal grooming kind of conversation, just kind of figuring out high level what that works, because we don't want to charge a fee to somebody.
Act as a trusted resource.
Right, exactly. But then really you kind of take it step by step. So you would underwrite a loan, and what gets provided back to the lender is a memo that's put together that they're able to act upon internally. So that means the bank is comfortable, they want to approve that loan. They may sign that, and then the next step would be to take that approval and then get SBA's approval on it. Mm-hmm. So I would say most lenders that use an LSP probably aren't PLP lenders, which means they don't have that delegated authority to approve it on the behalf of SBA.
Another acronym.
Yeah. So preferred lenders.
Thank you.
Yeah. And again, that's probably a good conversation another time too.
We'll touch that. Yeah,
we've touched on that a little bit previously, what the difference and what that means. But anyway, what it comes down to is that you kind of look at it in kind of three different steps. You have the start of the application to a bank approval, the steps going from a bank approval to officially getting the SBA approval, and then from the SBA approval to the actual closing and funding of the loan. If you kind of look at it in those three steps.
All right.
I think most within the industry would kind of agree with that.
Sounds like a timely, like it can extend the time horizon, I guess you should say, seems long when you talk about getting the approval, working with the LSP, getting the buy-in and the final authority from the bank who's ultimately responsible, and then getting the SBA to approve it too. What generally, I know it's all things are considered like on the completion of a package when you start the work,
right?
Like where the time starts.
Yeah, I mean, you can ask how long does it take to kind of end to end to do something, and there's so many factors that go into that. I would say it's heavily dependent on the complexity of what you're trying to accomplish. If the request is a simple working capital request, those go very quickly. You're talking kind of start to finish. That those can, especially if the lender is able to approve it on their own, you're talking maybe 10 days or less even, depending on how much tech is involved, what kind of automation you're using, because there's some processes that are truly simple. If you're talking about the purchase of some real estate that involves a business acquisition, you're talking about a multi-month process just because there's so many moving parts, and in many cases the borrowers will dictate how quickly that moves, because they don't want to commit to one step until they're sure this step is done. And so a lot of times you won't even get a final contract in that case until they're sure that they're financing, even though many contracts are they stipulate that these are contingent on obtaining financing. I mean, there's just all kinds of different ways that you see these things move, because there can be large transactions that are going on.
They are large transactions.
Yes.
Large is relative, right?
Right, of course.
They are
but you've got
meaningful.
such a wide range within the SBA program that, I mean, you might have a $300,000 request, which by many standards is not a small loan, but compared to a $5 million loan, there's a huge difference between those two.
Yeah. All right, quickly before we go, because this is getting a little long. When a bank works with an LSP, or a lender, I should say, is it all or nothing? Can they keep some expertise in-house and just kind of...
Yeah, so that will vary from LSP to LSP as far as the way they're willing to work. The limitation from an SOP or SBA's rules are that it can be just one small function. It can be the entire thing. So, you have the freedom.
There's flexibility in there.
Right.
It's just depending on who you're...
That's right. Who
LSP
you're partnering with. That's right.
Okay. Well, this has been helpful for me. I hope it's been helpful for somebody out there. And again, thank you for tuning in to the Novice and the Pro. And we've got some other stuff to unpack. Maybe that PLP is how do we get that, and what does that mean for a lender that wants to obtain that status?
Sure. Yeah.
So maybe we'll unpack that next time. We hope you have a great day, and we'll see you soon.